As the sun sets over the great house, disquieting feelings of anxiety take hold of its inhabitants. In the distance, the sound of thunder can be heard. Growing in fury and intensity, the storm will soon arrive, heralding new terror at Collinwood. Welcome to Terror at Collinwood. I am your hostess, Danielle, aka Penny Dreadful, and I am very excited to get to today's episode. But before we do, I have some great news for you, a couple of great news items. First, Stuart Manning has shared some exciting news about the limited reprint of Daytime Gothic. From the press release, let me read this for you. Good news, our sold-out Dark Shadows charity fanzine Daytime Gothic has been reprinted and is available now. The new printing is limited to 100 copies, and once they're gone, they're gone. So don't miss your chance to get the magazine. Purchase via the link I will provide in the show notes. People have asked if there will be a follow-up issue. As things stand, nothing has been confirmed, but it may happen in 2024. Check your Stairway Through Time for further information, or look out for updates on the mailing list. So you can sign up for the mailing list for Daytime Gothic. If you go to the Dark Shadows news page on Twitter or on Facebook, it's very easy to do that. There's also an Instagram page for Daytime Gothic, so you can find it all over social media. And continuing on here, thanks to everyone who supported our celebration of Dark Shadows. Proceeds will once again benefit our chosen charity, Macmillan Cancer UK. So check out the link in the show notes. If you missed this the first time around, you definitely want to jump on this, because this is a sensational zine. I mean, it's beyond a zine. It's a beautifully designed book with some great articles in it. And the best part is it all goes to a good cause. And I have one more tidbit before we get to the show. Rondo Award writer Frank J. Dello Stritto is the master of the monster mashup. I have a couple of his books. This comes from the Rondo Awards website. In 3 Can't Put Down novels, Frank has woven together the untold histories of various movie werewolves and wolfmen, untangled the wanderings of Universal and Hammer's mummies, and explored with Carl Denham the many lost worlds and giant monsters of the Pacific. All this in addition to his trailblazing work on the real-life history of Bela Lugosi. And there's also his newest book featuring the zombies of classic cinema. You can get his great books with beautiful cover and interior designs by my friend George Igor Chastain over at cultmoviespress.com. The link is in the show notes. And without further ado, I want to get to the show. I have a group of mega fans in this episode. It's going to be really fun. Let me just give you some context here. I was over at Seaview Terrace for a get-together there over at Collinwood, and everyone was sitting around the table just talking about their memories of Dark Shadows and just Dark Shadows festivals, fan stuff, memories of hanging out at the house, etc. And I decided, hey, let's record this. So I pulled out the microphone and we just started talking about our favorite moments in Dark Shadows, favorite characters, and I have a great group of fans here in this episode. Joel Flanagan, who's the admin of the Many Faces of Nancy Barrett Facebook page, Tweetie Jackie Blackburn, co-admin of the Dark Shadows Appreciation Society, Jimmy Hutcheson, the inimitable Jimmy Hutcheson, who you've heard in a prior episode, and he's back in this one, Virginia Fox Brekhus, Mair Bear, Joe Escobar, who you also heard in a previous episode, Guy Haines, who you've heard in a couple of episodes, Beth Caster, Jeff Kenny, who you heard in the Collectors episode. He's also the co-admin of several Facebook groups, including the Dark Shadows Collectors Group, Dark Shadows for All, and Dark Shadows the Old House, among others. So I just kind of went around with the mic and we just talked Dark Shadows, and it was really fun, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did recording it. So let's get to the show. Be careful, my friend, where you tread, for I warn you now, there are spoilers ahead. House of Dark Shadows. Nobody lives there.
That's great.
This here Collins property. People trespassing. Need to get out of here before Miss Stoddard calls in Sheriff Addison.
I was about to just start chatting with these people, and here comes Matthew Morgan trying to throw me off the grounds again. How are you today?
It'd be better if I didn't have all that firewood to bring in, and that Bill Malloy, he's irritating.
So I'm here with a group of Dark Shadows fans, hardcore Dark Shadows fans, and we're going to be just chit-chatting, and I'm going to go around here, and everybody's going to introduce themselves. Who am I speaking to here?
Joe Flanagan.
Joe, you are a longtime Dark Shadows fan. You went to every Dark Shadows festival, was it?
Not really. A good number of them, though.
A good number of them, okay.
And I'm the administrator of the Many Faces of Nancy Barrett Facebook page for the last 11 and a half years.
Fantastic. And what is your name, madam?
My name is, they call me Tweetie on Facebook, Tweetie Jackie Blackburn.
And Tweetie, have you ever been to Dark Shadows festivals?
I have never been to a festival.
No.
Or a convention. I spent a lot of my time with Uncle Sam's Misguided Children, which is the United States Marine Corps. I was deployed.
Okay. Well, we're here. It's even better because we're in Collinwood itself.
Yes.
We're in Seaview Terrace, so we are experiencing the terror at Collinwood firsthand here. Who am I speaking to here?
This is Jimmy Hutcheson from Springtown, Texas.
Jimmy Hutcheson. Well, it's good to see you again. Are you having fun here at Seaview Terrace?
Fun. I remember that. Yes, this is it. This is fun. There really is nothing like getting together in this wonderful house with these great people that you've known for years and years, and you get to see them again and talk Dark Shadows and things. It's wonderful.
Yes. The reason I pulled out the microphone here is that everyone was sitting around talking about Dark Shadows and telling such interesting stories about the festivals and the show and stuff, and I said, wow, why am I not recording this?
Exactly.
So it's
never know what you might catch.
That's true. You never know what I might need to edit out of the podcast. All right. I'm continuing on here. Who's this here quietly sitting away?
My name's Virginia.
Virginia. And how long have you been a Dark Shadows fan?
Since 1969.
Are you still just as much a fan now as you were then?
Even more.
Even more.
Yeah.
It grows exponentially every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And who am I speaking to here?
This is Mair Bear. It's my handle on Facebook.
Mair Bear. And you have been involved in the Dark Shadows fandom for quite a while. I remember seeing your name over the years. So how do you feel about Dark Shadows in 2023?
Fantastic. I'm still a lifelong fan. Started going to the festivals in 1990, did about maybe a dozen of them. Mm-hmm. And it's always great to be here in Seaview with other fans, or cousins, as we like to call each other.
Yes, indeed. Collins cousins. And here we are with the man, the myth, the legend. Who am I speaking to here?
Joe Escobar.
Joe Escobar. And Joe, we've heard you before talking about the 1897 storyline. So how are you finding your time here at Seaview Terrace?
Well, I'm really enjoying it. I grew up in this area, and I always love coming back. And I just retired from teaching, so I'm spending a lot of time here this summer.
Wonderful. Maybe we'll be living in Collinwood soon.
Well, no, I'm going
whether they know it or not.
I'll be in Portsmouth visiting my mother. But
okay. And here we are. We just heard him on the podcast again recently. I'm here with Guy Haines. Hey, Guy, how's it going?
Fine. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for playing that House of Dark Shadows trailer music. That was pretty awesome.
Yes, I was going to say death kept their love alive.
Yes.
It's funny. I discovered that quite by accident. My friend Darren Gross from California, who's worked on the restoration of the movie Night of Dark Shadows, has been looking for that piece for a long time. He had some clues about it, but he didn't know the composer and he didn't know the name of the piece. Mm-hmm. And I just stumbled upon it so accidentally a couple weeks ago, and we give him a call. We were very excited that we know now the composer's name and what it's called.
Yeah, that's really, you were playing it, and I said, that sounds very familiar. What is that from? And I'm thinking of all these things, and it was the trailer music for House of Dark Shadows. So I'm just going to sit down here in the middle of the room, right here, in the middle of the table, I guess, and I'm going to just throw out questions, and anybody who wants to jump in and shout out their responses, feel free. So what is your favorite Dark Shadows character?
Barnabas.
Barnabas?
Definitely.
Why?
Well, I guess when I started watching Dark Shadows, they started with the Barnabas storyline, and I was reading the Ross novels. For me, the licensing, like the comics too, it was always Barnabas, Quentin, and the. So I really identified with that character.
Okay. Anybody else want to throw out their favorites?
Mine was Dr. Julia Hoffman.
Julia?
I just thought the way that Grayson Hall played her was just so dry, very dry-witted, I can't explain it, but she was just my favorite character. In fact, I named one of my cats after Grayson.
You named your cat Grayson?
I had a cat named Grayson, yeah.
Oh, wow. Did you ever get to meet any of the Hall family?
Never did get to meet her because she died in 85, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But,
Did you ever get to meet Sam or Matt?
no.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, never got to meet either one of them either. But
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have a favorite character?
I also agree. I was going to say Dr. Julia Hoffman as well. I really, really enjoy, and this is interesting. It's not so much her camaraderie with Jonathan, but she had great chemistry with John Carlin. Oh. She really, really did. And they, of course, they both, empathized because of, their problems with dealing with Barnabas.
Sure.
But I mean, he came to her rescue so many times. She came to his rescue so many times. It's just amazing. It was really a stroke of genius that the people that were typing out the name forgot the N on Julian.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Because otherwise it would have been a man.
Right, yeah. Anybody else?
Angelique, I know I'm going to be different from everybody else.
Can you repeat that?
Angelique.
Angelique, awesome.
Angelique, because of the simple fact that she was a young girl, and Barnabas kind of took advantage of her, I think. Mm-hmm. I think she was misunderstood. Mm-hmm. And I read the book, Angelique's Descent. Yeah. So it went more into detail about their relationship. Mm-hmm. But my favorite character was Angelique, and I got to meet the lady.
Oh, you got to meet Lara Parker?
Yes, I did.
And what was that experience like?
Well, at first I was kind of like, ooh. But a very warm person, very down to earth, and I posed with a picture with her.
Wonderful. Yeah. Anybody else want to add their favorite characters?
I was talking to a guy just I think it was last night when we came back from when we were driving up here. We were talking about what Joe was saying with the camaraderie and the chemistry between Grayson and Jonathan. One of my favorite scenes between those two was they've come back from 1840, or they've gone forward to 1995, and she was put under a spell and kind of betrayed him, and she felt terrible about it, and she was too weak to go up the staircase, and he was, come on, and she's like, no, just leave me, I'm not worthy or whatever, and he's like, never without you, Julia, never. I just thought that was a turning point for the two of them where, he wasn't, I don't think he was in love with her, but I think he loved her as a really close friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? I know you said
Of course mine is Julia, but I have to say I've grown to love Mrs. Johnson. I just love Mrs. Johnson on this show. She was the voice of reason and no one paid attention to her. Maybe it was her karma because she came on as a spy when she first came onto the show. Maybe her karma caught up to her. Yeah. But I just thought Clarice Blackburn's acting was wonderful. Not only as Mrs. Johnson, but as Abigail and Minerva Trask. Yeah. And poor thing had a little problem, though, when she died in 1995. She kept blinking.
Right.
I think they wanted her to keep her eyes open, and she had a little trouble there.
She's a brilliant writer as well. She wrote the Emmy Award-winning Jesse and Angie, the first African-American couple on soap operas.
Do you remember what show it was?
This was All My Children.
On All My Children.
On All My Children. I read that she wrote that. Jesse and Angie, the first African-American romance.
That's awesome.
And she won the Emmy for that.
And she won the Emmy, yeah.
Yes,
because she went on to do more writing than acting after Dark Shadows continued.
Yes, she did. She won the Emmy. Yeah.
And Jimmy, I think I asked you this last time. I'm going to ask you again. Favorite Dark Shadows character?
Harry Johnson. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, God bless him.
Damien Edwards.
Him, yes. Gee, sounds too cliche to say Barnabas.
Not at all.
Oh, yeah.
Say what you feel.
Well, there's so many facets to Barnabas. That's what makes him interesting. Yes, starts out as a villain and then becomes like a hero to the family. He will sacrifice himself do everything he can to save his present-day family. And he and Julia become like Holmes and Watson, solving mysteries. And I think that was a wonderful thing. I think they could have continued on being more mystery solvers than supernatural stuff, for that matter. But
Sure. So good answer. And we are joined by a new face here. Who am I speaking to?
Beth Caster.
The legendary Beth Caster. And Beth, who is your favorite Dark Shadows character?
Oh my gosh. I always liked Roger because he just was so funny.
He was.
Yeah, and even when I was a kid, I just liked his humor.
Yes, very entertaining, very wry sense of humor.
Yeah.
Roger's great answer. Virginia, you've been remiss in not adding. Who's your favorite Dark Shadows character?
Quentin.
Quentin. Oh, which Quentin? Quentin.
The 1897 Quentin, the real Quentin, yes.
Okay, the real Quentin. Good answer. The real Quentin, I agree. Okay. Now, favorite Dark Shadows storyline. How about favorite Dark Shadows storyline? Who wants to jump in first on this?
1795.
Why?
Because it establishes the relationship between Barnabas and Angelique, which carries through almost to the end of the show. And it also, just the feel of being in another century was quite different for a soap opera in those days.
Okay, good answer. I heard another 1795.
I like it because you get the backstory of Barnabas and how he became a vampire.
I think that was the first ever.
Yeah,
see that kind
right. And I mean, because he was such a cad before. I mean, he was just horrible to Julia, horrible to Caroline. He really was a villain. And then you go back in time and you see a softer side, and he was actually quite sweet before, and kind of vulnerable before he was cursed.
Okay.
So it's kind of an interesting twist for Jonathan to play.
We did the podcast in 1897, so I'm going to say the prelude to that with the Quentin's ghost story, because it introduces the werewolves and it leads into 1897. You have that really classic period where you bring in the real Quentin, and he continues through 1897, and it begins his story arc.
Okay, excellent, good. Anybody else have thoughts? Yep.
I'm going to go a different tact. I agree with everybody of how important all these stories were because they set the storylines for just about everything after that. But I love Parallel Time 1970. Oh. I just thought that it was just, not only because it was such a brilliant idea, but because they had to come up with something so they could film the movie and do the TV series at the same time. And I just thought it was brilliant how they have him discovered the second day that he goes, or even the first day that he goes into Parallel Time, shut him off in a coffin, and then he goes off to Lyndhurst to film the movie. And then they have all these people, Hoffman is sent off for relaxation, Roger and Elizabeth are gone half the time anyway. And it allows the other characters, such as Quentin and Angelique, and Alexis and all of them, and then they add a couple more characters.
Longworth and Yeager.
Yeah, and they added Damian Edwards, he's probably my favorite non-major character. But I also love it because Nancy Barrett is such a great actress, but the way that she's able to differentiate Carolyn Loomis from Carolyn Stoddard, I think, is her best work. I really, really do.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Since we already did the second part of 1897 before, I'll talk more about 1995. Even though it was very short-lived, I thought that was extremely innovative to have them go into the future like that. And, it really shines. Carolyn is just, I'm sorry, she's channeling Baby Jane.
Yes.
There's a scene where she's visiting Stokes eating grapes, and you can just see she's madder than a hatter, just the way she's eating the grapes, And Mrs. Johnson, Clarice really shined there. So good, very underrated, underused actress. And then there's still that wonderful moment that just grips me where Carolyn can't remember who this is in the picture. And he goes, "It's you, Carolyn." Yeah. And then kisses her on the head. Yeah, it's just like, my God, you see how much he really loves and cares for these people. It's for his family. It's amazing.
Anybody else?
1795 for the same reasons everybody else said.
1795? Yeah.
1795.
Okay, good. Anybody else? Beth?
No, I like 1795 too.
1795?
I do.
Okay, Virginia?
1897.
1897 with the real Quentin?
Right.
Okay, good. All right, last question. One more question. We're going to wrap it up. and this is a question I'm stealing from Joe. Joe, good idea. Favorite Dark Shadows festival, but I'm going to expand it. Favorite Dark Shadows fan memory of anything involving either the festival or coming to Seaview Terrace or getting together with fellow fans to enjoy the show. Any memories come to mind? Anybody can jump in.
I'm probably going to do one from a festival and one from here.
Okay.
The festival, the thing that two stand out to me. One I talked to Donna about, where they asked the entire panel what their memories of Grayson were. And Donna jumped in right away and she said, well, I remember the first day I was on the set and I ran into Grayson. And Grayson said to me, oh, no, not another redhead. You're not going to be trouble, are you, honey? And Donna said, and I knew she had her way with every redhead on the set. And then later on, when Donna died for the first time or was out of the script, she was upset. And Grayson came up to her and said, oh, don't worry about it, honey. Next week you'll be back as a ghost. And she was. My favorite memory, of course, was probably, I had a really good time the first time I was here, but I met probably someone who's going to be my longtime friend until I die, because he's a lot younger than me, Jason. We hit it off immediately. Bob is really good at putting people together that he knows will get along. And it's been all 3 times that I've been here, twice he's put me with people that I didn't know, and we've got along famously. So that has been, and of course, being with your family. This is all our family. So it's been really terrific.
Great. Yes, Joe.
When I was working at the Treadway Inn in Newport, right near the Black Pearl, I came in to get my paycheck, and I saw a Xerox copy of a registration card with Jonathan Frid's name on it, and I thought it was a joke. But they told me he's waiting in the lounge for you. So I ran down to the lounge, and there was Jonathan Frid, and I got to talk to him for about 20, 30 minutes. He offered to buy me a soda in the bar, but I got it free as an employee. When he checked out, he asked me to get his luggage. I got a picture with him, and he signed a fanzine. It was a great weekend, working and seeing him come in and out of the hotel from time to time.
That's a great memory. Thanks for sharing that. We're joined by another familiar face here, Jeff Kenny, who you heard in the Dark Shadows collect. Nobody will escape the gravitational pull of the microphone. My contraption, as Count Patofi once referred to it, the strange contraption here. So Jeff, we were just talking. We talked about our favorite Dark Shadows character, our favorite Dark Shadows storyline, and any favorite memories of fandom. Do you care to share any thoughts on those things?
Well, storyline-wise, will always be 1897 for me.
Okay.
Favorite character, next to Barnabas, will always be Jameson possessed by Patofi.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, great. Fantastic.
He was just so devilish and evil.
Yes.
And fandom, 2012 festival, since it was my first fest, getting to meet a lot of people in person that I'd only talked to online, meeting the actors for the first time, and meeting my original crush from when I was a kid, Nancy Barrett, that I've loved her ever since I was a child.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love fandom. It's a big family. You get the black sheep of the family sometime, but it's a lot of fun.
All right. Anybody else care to share a favorite fandom memory?
Well, out of all the festivals I've gone to, I guess there's 3 that kind of tie for number one. First one would be 1990, which was my first festival. It was just really cool to see the stars in real life. And the first time I went around the corner to get Jonathan's autograph, he was right there. It was so cool to be that close to Barnabas. Mm-hmm. And then I would say 91, because that's when I started meeting people, because I went to the first festival by myself. And I met people, but I didn't really hang out with anybody. But I'd had a pen pal from 90 to 91, and I started meeting a bunch of people. And then 97 was a great festival, because not only did I meet people that I knew online from, we used to be in an undernet chat room, the IRC chat room. So we got to meet a lot of those people in real life. But it was my first trip to Seaview, and it was before we could get in the house, but we couldn't stay here. Okay. And we came through that hedge back there at night, and I got to see the house the way you saw it in the opening sequence of the show. Yeah. And we filmed a really funny video here that Guy and a couple of his friends had someone dressed up as Julia running around, recreating the episode where the ghost of Dave Woodard is tormenting her. So those are my 3 favorite.
Thank you for sharing those. Anybody else care to share?
Dave, is that you, Dave?
I have three also. I have many, but of course I always treasure the time that I was able to come up here with Jonathan Frid in 1985. My gosh, in 2 years it'll be 40 years that I was here on Memorial Day. This is Memorial Day weekend and we're speaking, and he was just such a wonderful person to be with, and very funny and very poignant, and lots of memories. And then my second, I had to say, was staying with Louis Edmonds when he needed a nurse, and I just happened to be a nurse and was able to stay with him for 3 weeks. And he's just a wonderful. He was funny and naughty, and that'll be another podcast. And finally, my memories of all of our parties up here. I have wonderful memories from the festivals. My memories of the parties and being able to come to this wonderful house and decorate it and make friends and share the beauty of this house with the fans just brings a warmth to my heart that I really enjoy and treasure. Yeah. So, and it was so wonderful. We've had several guests from the show. We've had Sharon Smith. We've had Marie Wallace, Catherine Lee Scott, and I don't know if you want to mention who we have this weekend.
Donna Wandry.
Yes.
All right. Anybody else care to share any favorite fan memories? Okay, I'm going to come around here to Tweetie.
Well, I haven't been in fandom as long as you guys have, because I went in the military. I was very young. I was 18 years old. I'm one of the people that ran home from school.
Mm-hmm.
And
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I'm born and raised Philadelphia, and went in the Marine Corps. And my husband and I, we traveled all over the world, just about. But I never got to see Seaview. So the highlight, I would say my highlight, it was staying here last year with Guy and all the rest of the guys and everything. I couldn't believe where I was. That I was actually inside the house I watched as a kid growing up, more than 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I watched the episodes with Barnabas, and I watched Victoria Winters walk down those steps, and I couldn't believe that I was actually living here at this house, and everybody was just so friendly and so nice. I felt like I was with people I have known all my life, and I just met them.
Yeah.
So I feel at home here with Guy and Jeff and Joe and you guys. I feel really like I'm at home around family.
That is exactly how it feels. That's how it felt the first time I stayed here too. It was like everybody's so welcoming and friendly.
I know, everybody's so friendly, and it really is welcoming. It's a welcome pace, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It really is.
All right, thank you.
I have another thing that favorite scene. Even it's different. It's different than favorite storyline.
Go for it.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but my favorite scene has to be the confrontation between Joshua and Barnabas in the basement of the old house.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
They could have both won an Emmy. It was so good. And it made me feel so much better about Joshua, because I think he gets a bad rap. I really, really do. Everybody thought he was evil and mean, and he didn't care about anybody. But that was the way men were back then, especially through all he must have gone through, fighting in 2 wars. But he really cared about his family. He really, really did. And that's the only thing that saved him, the fact that he wasn't totally, in love with his son, because he would have suffered from the curse as well. But that scene is just so powerful to me. It really, really is.
Oh, yeah. Anybody else have a favorite scene they want to throw?
Another good scene was during 1897 between Barnabas and Angelique in the tower room.
In 1897?
Yeah, it was flawless. When she's saying, could you maybe love me? And he's just like, no, there's too much has happened. And it was flawless because Jonathan was spot on. He didn't have any flubs. Like, he knew his script that day. Laura was great. It was just a really good scene between the two of them.
Agreed. Yeah, Guy.
One of my favorite scenes is the scene between Cassandra and Julia when Barnabas has accepted his fate and he's going to have the dream curse and die and become a vampire again. And Vicky and Julia are talking in the drawing room, and Vicky says something like, "He's very special to you, isn't he?" Meaning Barnabas. And Julia looks at the camera and goes, "Yes, very special." And then Cassandra comes in at that moment and says, "Hey, what's wrong?" And Julia walks over and slaps the heck out of her. And you'll be sorry you did that, Doctor. And Julia goes, just walks away.
Vicky,
classic scene.
Vicky makes it even better because she comes up and says, "You deserve much more than just a slap in the face."
Yeah. Anybody else want to add one?
Well, not another scene, but we were talking about how he loves Mrs. Johnson. I have two, like what I call supporting characters that I love. Mrs. Johnson is one because I thought she was a hoot. I mean, the scene where right before Barnabas introduces himself, she's complaining that nobody picks up after themselves, and I'm like, well, "You're the maid, isn't that your job?" So I thought that was hilarious. And then I love Buzz Hackett. I mean,
Buzz.
He was so real and just so hilarious. And he really kind of showed his character, like maybe he wasn't just after Carolyn's money, because Jason offers him, money, a new bike, and he's just like, "No, I like the chick I got. I don't need a new bike, So it really kind of showed that he wasn't after her money. He really liked her.
Buzz definitely has a cult following. People really dig Buzz. I'm surprised there isn't like a Buzz Hackett T-shirt or something.
There should be one.
I do have another one. It was in 1897. And we finally get to see that there really is an understanding between Julia and Angelique.
Yes, that was
when she shows up at the rectory and she sends Angelique a message and she doesn't know that it's Julia, and she sees her and she goes, "How are you here?" And she goes, "Well, Barnabas is here, you're here, why not me? But you're human." And then she starts going off on her by saying, "Barnabas will ruin you," or something like that. And she says he's this way, and this way. And she goes, "Who made him that way?"
Yeah.
But then after that, they have a scene later on where they actually sit and talk to each other. Mm-hmm. That's why the 1840 scene but I understand why, because she didn't know who she was.
Right.
But I think they had a really great rapport, and I think if Barnabas had ever eventually gone with Angelique, I don't really think that Julia would have been as upset as she was with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, Angelique grew like the other characters in the show, like Barnabas, Quentin. Angelique also grew as a character over the show. Of course,
absolutely.
By the time we're at Leviathan, she still has her own ulterior motives with the spell with Quentin and Maggie, with the pitchfork, like her old tricks. But she also becomes an ally of sorts against the Leviathan. She helps against Petofi. Sure, absolutely. That's why it was, when I talked with Amanda on the podcast and Catherine, we talked about it was kind of disappointing that Angelique in 1840 is the original recipe Angelique and doesn't know all of those future events. But it was also kind of cool to see her learning about those things that she hasn't experienced yet. But it would have been interesting to have the ally Angelique helping them against.
But she eventually does become that ally.
She does eventually go there. Yeah, exactly. Anybody else have any favorite scenes before we wrap it up, or closing thoughts? Anybody? No, nobody.
Well,
all right.
Just again, it's wonderful to be this big Dark Shadows family, and it all is thanks to the creator Dan Curtis and Art Wallace and all the wonderful writers and the personnel involved, Leela Swift and the other directors, and of course the actors. We're not a dying breed, because there are renewed generations that are discovering the show, and hopefully if there is a new series, Dark Shadows Reincarnation, there'll be more fans.
Yeah, and the future of Dark Shadows, there could be new things, new shows, new merchandise. I mean, it still continues on, and it's available on streaming. Yeah. In fact, I just heard recently from a fan who first discovered the show during the pandemic, and they watched it on the whole thing on streaming, and that was their first viewing of Dark Shadows. So it's available. Tubi, the whole show is on Tubi.
I know there's more merchandise coming.
Can you give any hints, or is that forbidden?
I'm sorry, I better not say anything.
Well, that's a tantalizing enough hint as it is.
And one more thank you to Robert Covert.
If
it wasn't for his unbelievable music, I think it would have taken something away from the show. I really, really do. Yeah. My favorite is Elephants at Collinwood. I still say that. Where's the trumpets? Yeah. And it sounds like there's elephants at Collinwood.
Okay, yeah. I know exactly which one you're talking about.
And a big shout shout out to Jim Pearson, who needs to do this podcast.
Jim Pearson, you are welcome to join me anytime. All right. Well, I want to thank all of my wonderful guests here. It was a pleasure talking to all of them. And please stay tuned for more exciting interviews on Terror at Collinwood.
And for as long as they lived, the dark shadows never truly vanished, for there will always be terror at Collinwood. Terror at Collinwood is a Penny Dreadful